Greetings, everyone. Thank you for thank you for coming up this lunchtime. This is spring weather; it's shining outside. For this talk by Wilton Schereka, who is a graduate student fellow of the W.E.B. Du Bois Center. This event is also special because it marks a kind of official public opening of our partnership with the Centre for Humanities Research at the University of Western Cape in Cape Town, South Africa, a partnership which you won't be surprised to learn that Wilton was instrumental in forming. I wanted to read a brief passage from our Memorandum of Understanding, which speaks to why we've formed this partnership. Its purpose is to foster transcontinental solidarity around the ideals of racial justice, social equality, democracy, dignity, and peace. It is also intended to facilitate knowledge sharing between our two organizations, to provide a platform for the interchange of ideas, to produce engaging programming, such as this, for a diverse set of audiences on both sides of the Atlantic, and to encourage new interdisciplinary research and scholarship. So we look forward to many years working with our colleagues in Cape Town. And I think it entirely appropriate that the partnership begins with Wilton, who is a scholar, an archivist, an activist, and a writer from Cape Town. He has 2 MA degrees, show off, one from the University of the Western Cape in history and questions of blackness, Afrofuturism, and Black electronic music. The second is from Brown University in Africana Studies. He's in the final stages of his PhD at the University of the Western Cape on the work of struggle song and sound in the history of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. As an archivist, Wilton has worked in the archives of the District 6 Museum in Cape Town. In 2025, he was awarded a graduate fellowship at the Du Bois Center at UMass Amherst. I am privileged indeed to be able to call Wilton both a colleague, a comrade, and a friend. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Just make sure I'm on. Good? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good Lord, I don't know how to start. I am incredibly thankful to be here with all of you in this kind of moment. And before I start, I just want to say the 8th of March was International Women's Day. And I've just been thinking about some of the incredible women in my life. I'm in the Du Bois reading group every Monday morning. And the majority of the folks in that Du Bois reading group are women who help ground us in our thinking, in our organizing, in our work of struggle. Beyond that, 2 of my favorite people from back home had their birthdays yesterday and tomorrow. Dr. Heidi Grunebaum, who might be in Cape Town, might be in Germany, I'm not sure. And Dr. Natasha Valley, who are also remarkable scholars. But most importantly for me, my remarkable and incredible and revolutionary wife, who is a poet and a scholar and a teacher, has her birthday today. And so I just want to say, a happy birthday to to this. Okay, all right. So I want to line up a bunch of caveats, but I'll just jump straight into it, and we'll see how we unfold as we go along. It feels near impossible to begin a talk on the work of W.E.B. Du Bois and his relation to 2 South African stalwarts of struggle, Maxeke and Sol Plaatje, without first mentioning that we are in the core of an empire bent on the destruction and accumulation and hoarding of the wealth of the planet at the genocidal expense grounded in centuries of Western imperialism. Du Bois, as complicated as he is, remained resolute in his anti-imperialism as his life continued and as he learned and traveled and observed. And so perhaps it is a chance to remember that growth and chance and change is possible and potentially available to us if we are open to it. Du Bois is a prime example for that process of change. From his moments of the talented 10th and his early initial support for Zionism because of the World War, to becoming one of the most important voices in the work of Black liberation struggle globally, and an advocate and active member of anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist organizing and teaching. I note this because I think now more than ever, it's important that we understand that change is possible in our thinking, in our organizing, in our activism, in our teaching, in our learning. Okay. There are a myriad and million other things and strands I want to pull at throughout this talk, and staying abreast with recent news, as well as being part of the Monday Morning Du Bois reading group that I mentioned. Those strands have multiplied 1 million times over in these last 2 weeks alone. I am aware you're hard on your sleeve type, and I struggle with really shaky anxiety. So if my voice shakes or if I get emotional, forgive me and try to stay with me, please. My father and his teaching me struggle songs and how to toy as a child are what inspired my first love for and deep interest in the histories of revolutionary struggle in South Africa and elsewhere. When my dad and his younger brother, Uncle Edwin, would sing Shona Malanga together on a Friday night after having a braai, we all gathered and the two of them decide now is the moment that they're going to sing struggle songs together. I felt constantly reminded of the radical potential of the Black Sonic. It is with them in mind and my own commitment to the constant need for the work of struggle in mind that I tried to keep my notes as close to the stories of Charlotte Maxeke, who you see on top there, and Sol Plaatje, who you see at the bottom there, and Du Bois's crossover. But I will also admit that my bias remains with the continued work of amplifying the histories of South African struggle, as I suspect Du Bois would have wanted from me anyway. I think he would have wanted me to talk about South Africa in this context. So I'm just giving myself that permission. Okay. One last thing before going into some of the findings in my time as a Du Bois Fellow in 2025 and my time in the archives here at UMass Amherst. And that is that land acknowledgements are vital namings of histories and cultures erased by genocide. But our work and our duty is also to continue the work of caring for and dispersing land in ways that can provide sustained return for people of indigenous origin and those of us who find ourselves here because of US imperialism and genocidal practices. This talk today, those are all the preambles, I think. This talk today considers three main people, though I mentioned more than once also the work of Enoch Sontonga in composing what would become the national anthem of South Africa and the anthem of the then radical liberation movement, the African National Congress, Nkosi Sikelel' Africa. The two main people I mentioned already, aside from Du Bois, is Charlotte Maxeke and Sol Plaatje, and they are both vital stalwarts of the anti-apartheid and anti-colonial histories of South and Sub-Saharan Africa. And they form the spine of the connection drawn here between Du Bois and South Africa. And I'll say again, I was extremely fortunate that when I came into my time as a fellow and I spent time in the archives here, Libby, who's sitting right in front, Caroline, these folks were remarkable in providing me with just laying everything out. to the point where I saw my parents for the first time in the States in the 6 years that I've lived here. And they pulled out anything in reference to Cape Town and South Africa that they could find. One of which was a reference to the town where I was born into, where I grew up. And I don't think they had any idea that that was such a deeply biographical and specific point, but it landed in a place for me and my father and my mother that we still speak about. I mean, they are never gonna forget that. They're never gonna forget Louis and Adam and Caroline and the folks up there. So as much as this talk is about sound and the connection between Du Bois and these South Africans, it is also a talk about the importance of archive, of memory, and for me, the work of sound in preserving archives, memories, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I kind of nudged towards answering that first question already, but these are some of the things grounding the talk today, and so I just wanted to put that up so that folks know what I'm thinking about and thinking with and thinking through. This is part of a longer dissertation project, but also hopefully possibly a book project. So yeah, those are some of the questions. And then I also just wanted us to open with a quote from Charlotte Maxeke, where she says, "This work is not for yourselves. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above your people, but live with them. If you can rise, bring someone with you." And again, I hope we can hold on to that notion of bringing someone with us as we go. So, Solomon Tekisho Plaatje, or Sol Plaatje, as he is known and as we know him back home, was the first Black African to bring Shakespeare to Africa in a native Southern African language. To translate Shakespearean English into Setswana in and of itself was a political and radical act, saying, here is this classic work of theater, and it does not solely belong to white colonial audiences of learning and teaching and practice arts. Here is a translation that works and can work for all people. He is also the first person we know to have recorded what would later become the national anthem of South Africa, composed by Enoch Sontonga and Nkosi Sikelel' Africa. Charlotte Maxeke, the other key figure in this talk, was the first Black African woman from the continent to graduate from a US university. And her time at Wilberforce University lined up with Du Bois's time, brief time there as well. So she actually learned under him during her time studying there. But yeah, and so Maxeke remains a vital figure in the histories of and stories of South Africa's anti-colonial and anti-apartheid struggle, and her choral traditions and her inclination to the sonic played vital roles in the work of the struggle I'm considering here. Again, I am very biased. I think of most things through the work of sound. And I don't only locate the work of sound in the ear. I know that sound travels elsewhere. It hits you in your chest, you feel it under your feet, so on and so forth. And so when thinking about Charlotte Maxeke, who I found correspondences with Du Bois in the archive, and thinking about Sol Plaatje, with whom Du Bois also corresponded, and we also have that here in the archive. The thing that ties them together for me is their insistence on sound, their constant reference to notions of spirit, and how they think about sound in the revolutionary work of struggle that we are all engaged in constantly. Actually, let me play. Okay, So this is what we have, the first known recording of what would later become the national anthem of South Africa. At that time, it was a revolutionary anthem of the African National Congress. This was recorded in 1923. And so, yeah, we are, and it just so happens that it's Sol Plaatje who did the recording. All right. I wanted to play that so that we are also imbued with the spirit of these figures who I'm thinking with and who mean so much to me personally, but to our people as well. Du Bois, as we have encountered throughout his work, is always thinking alongside the work of sound as well. Spirituals form the spine and the root that holds up and guides us through one of the expressions of his genius in The Souls of Black Folk, the constant return to spirituals at the break of chapters, and is vital in that text. What struck me more than anything in finding and looking through these exchanges between Du Bois and Charlotte Maxeke and Sol Plaatje is not necessarily the wording alone, but the fact that these pieces of communication exist at all. The fact that they exist and we have managed somehow, some way to get a hold of them and preserve them is vital beyond comprehension. And having the connection with the Center for Humanities Research is I instigated that because, again, selfishly and biasedly, I want that world. I want these archival records to travel. They cannot live stationarily on shelves. These are things that we can learn from and take from. Yeah. Anyway, I never think of Uncle William Du Bois as a spicy, sassy uncle. But when I read his piece on Jan Smuts for New Masses written in 1947, I learned that he was always coming with some comic timing, with some biting wit. He was sharp, but he was interesting and funny and worth considering behind the suit and mustached look of an aging Southern gentleman. In his own words on Smuts, in the opening paragraph, he says, and I quote, "There is no person who illustrates better the confusion and paradox of our present situation than Jan Christian Smuts. It is characteristic that he should be named Christian. It is characteristic that he should be the man who lately presided over the British War Council in the absence of Churchill, that he should be called one of the world's few illustrious men, and at the same time stand to most of us as the typical representative of the hypocrisy, double-dealing, and coldly calculated cruelty of the modern world. I am at a loss to understand how Mr. Smuts regards himself. I saw him at San Francisco in 1945, standing before the assembled nations of the world and pleading for human rights. A year later, before the United Nations, he was asking that the natives of South Africa be turned over to he was asking that the natives of Southwest Africa, now Namibia, be turned over to the Union of South Africa, now the Republic of South Africa, to be treated as the natives are there. That is, disenfranchised, forbidden to form or join labor unions, compelled to accept the lowest of modern wages under partially slave conditions, deprived of practically all civil rights. I want to think, end quote, sorry. I want to think always about time, struggle, and spirit. These three ethereal, evasive, metaphysical concepts. Spirit theorized through every iteration, time theorized through every iteration the physical sciences can bring. From quantum physics through thermodynamics, time is the center, but always escaping firm grasp. Time is what wears us down and provides us with a measure by which we interact with the world and come to know ourselves. But where and how and through what mechanism? The sun sets and rises, the tides push and pull, the moon waxes and wanes, all indicators of temporal shifting. But how and why and to what end? Spirit, on the other hand, operates in the realm of the religious, the mystical, the metaphysical. When we want to get at the set of intangible things that describe a feeling, we say that it is in the spirit of the thing. In the context of my dissertation, I say that it is, I named the work of the struggle as the spirit of the struggle. In a game of rugby, when someone plays dirty or punches someone, we say, well, that is not in the spirit of the game. It's an evasive descriptor and simultaneously an unbounded container of meaning. Both time and spirit shift in the meaning-making of the sonic utterance at the core of the liberation struggle in South Africa and elsewhere. Time becomes a sonic, sonorous pace setter, providing the pulse that shifts the mode and the mood of action in the work of resistance against the apartheid state. Spirit becomes the thing which imbues the words and actions of the people in their resistance with the depth of meaning-making at play. The spirit of the struggle evades the metaphysical in this way of coming to know the work of liberation insofar as it is the physical embodiment of a set of ideas. The spirit of the struggle, at least in part, exists through the sonic utterance of the people who dare to produce sound in this almighty battle for the right to exist at all. So I want to play another clip for you, and this is in the language of musicology, ethnomusicology, called throat singing or overtone singing. These are a group of isiXhosa folk from the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And I just want you to pay attention to how the voices work. When I think about time and spirit and the work of struggle, I think about sound, and these are the kinds of examples that come to mind. And I'll play two more towards the end. So I'm gonna pause there just because I would play the whole 16 minutes. But I think we would all go into, if you permit yourself, we would all go into a spiritual trance for sure. There are actually only 3 people vocalizing, but at the same time, you'll hear 6 or 7 different voices at once. People harmonizing with themselves at 2 different levels, in the back of their throat and the front of their throat. Someone is playing a mouth bow, another traditional instrument from Southern and Sub-Saharan Africa. And I include this because when thinking about the ways in Du Bois utilizes spirituals in his writing, it moves me in ways that I can't always find the language for in the language of the kind of material, concrete ways in which we try to evaluate and value these things that drive us. But at the same time, every time I hear this, it transports me elsewhere. I haven't lived in South Africa since 2019, but if I listen to struggle songs or I listen to the overtone singing of these elders, it takes me to a different kind of place. And so, yeah, I also just want to keep that kind of echoic black sonic in mind as I go along. So for me, sound matters. State repression through sonics is a genre of violence that has existed for long, over 200 years. We have evidence of states using sound as a torture method. Most recently, we have what they call the sound cannon, which blasts a frequency of noise at protesters as a means to do crowd control, as they call it, but really it's just extremely violent internal noise in your head. Alongside that, formal violence of the sonic language of the state comes the resistance work of sound. And again, Charlotte Maxeke and Sol Plaatje and Du Bois call on this work of what sound does for the spirit. But yeah, beyond the recorded resistance songs from the West, there is the insistence on our people making struggle music from the ground up always. It's always a group effort. It is always a collective effort. It is always maintained and sustained through producing and reproducing the sonic utterance over and over and over. It's not recorded in the formal kind of structure of doing recordings. So we are lucky that we have that early recording of Sol Plaatje singing in the 1920s. Okay, I'm going to play one more version of Nkosi Sikelele. This one's going to be 5 minutes, so you won't have to listen to my voice for 4 or 5 minutes. And then after that, I will wrap up because I want to talk. I want us to have a conversation as well. So this is a choir in South Africa. This was recorded I think in 2014, so just before Fees and Roads Must Fall kicked off in South Africa. And it is a recording of Nkosi Sikelele in Zulu, Xhosa, and then I believe Shona as well, because the anthem traveled across Southern and kind of up to Central Africa. And so, yeah, I just think it's a beautiful rendition of the composition. If I can get it to play. Okay. I'm gonna pause there because I want to wrap up the last couple. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me contain myself first. Um, yeah. The collective voice in the work of struggle is one that is vital and cannot be overlooked. And this move towards individualism on this kind of rampant scale that it is at the moment is something that is going to disorient us to the point where we're going to struggle to find each other. But the sonic utterance might be a way that we can also begin to nudge towards finding one another. You don't have to know how to keep the note to be singing along when you hear when something like that moves you. Okay, so I'll pause there on that section. Before I play a final clip, I want to. Okay, I'll read this last paragraph. I'll play the final clip, and then we can have an open discussion. I hope there are questions or comments, or if you want to throw stones, that's fine too. Not at me. So my kind of self-sustaining motto is "A luta continua," the struggle continues. When we say "A luta continua," when we repeat those words made iconic by Amilcar Cabral and Miriam Makeba, it is because we continue the work and spirit of the struggle through our efforts in our communities, in our classrooms, on the streets, in the wards, in the prisons. When my father was in prison for his work in the anti-apartheid struggle, and he smuggled letters out to my mother, it was via other prisoners, political or not. When the echo of the prisons were described to me by my father and other former detainees of the apartheid state, it was haunting precisely because of its evocation of the spirit of continued struggle. Our life's work is this struggle because the struggle must continue. And so, yeah, I just want to close with one last clip from a session of song during a protest at a Roads Must Fall protest. It was during a period where a lot of us were out in the streets calling for the decolonization of many of our university campuses, which then led into the Fees Must Fall moment, which was us calling for free education at tertiary and secondary and primary school levels all the way through. And so, yeah, I just wanted to end with a clip from recently as well, again, to show the kind of continuity of the sonic utterance over centuries in the work of struggle. And those words that you see there are the final words of the person who is being invoked in the song. The song is called Iyo Solomon, and the Solomon that they are referring to, or that we are referring to, is Solomon Mahlangu, a young person whose life was taken by the apartheid state in South Africa for his work in revolutionary action. pause there so that, we have a solid 20 minutes to chit chat before people have to run off after lunch. And I, again, just want to say thank you all so much for being here with me, for spending time with me. This room is much warmer than I expected to be. But yeah, again, just thank you all. Thank you to Adam. Thank you to Whitney so much. And thank you to the folks in Cape Town at the Center for Humanities Research for providing me with over a decade of teaching and learning. And a big special thanks to the folks in Special Collections who are, I swear, doing the Lord's work or something, because good Lord. Yeah, so if you want to say anything or ask questions or, anybody's welcome. And I know folks have to run, so please, if you need to go, don't. Yeah.
So first of all, this was beautiful. And I'm wearing makeup, so I couldn't cry during this, but like I wanted to. But I just wanted to know how you specifically define struggle music. Like, what is if there is like a concrete definition of what it means?
So that's a good question, because for me, I don't consider like folk music recordings from the States, Bob Seger, folks, I don't really consider that within this kind of work of struggle. Thank you so much. Of struggle music, just because the kind of collective making at play here is operating at a different level. And I'm not trying to, say that it's more or less special than anything else. I just think that it is operating at a different kind of, from a different standpoint, from a collective making standpoint. In South Africa, you have this notion of Ubuntu, which is I am because you are, the kind of collective spirit. And it plays out in a practical way in the making of songs like this. It also evades a kind of formal structure that desires an eventual recording, and so it's operating in a different space. So how I would define it is, on the one hand, it is tied to a spirit of collective making at all times. And so, when I finish the dissertation, maybe I'll have a much cleaner line for you. But that's where and if my advisors are watching, I'm working on it. If I get a cleaner line, I'll definitely swing it your way for sure. Yeah. Hey, sorry.
Thank you again for this great talk. I wondered if you were connecting the individuals you were talking about to sound. Was that something you were thinking about when you started working with the collections here, or did that come about after you were working with the collections that you made that connection and decided to pursue it?
When I went into the collections, I wasn't thinking of, I'm going to look for people who are talking, who relate to the work of sound that I'm already thinking about. I was just hoping for Du Bois speaking to directly South Africans. And so that's what I went in looking for. And I was just beyond fortunate that I found these two who have already been so formative in my thinking. So it was just by luck that I landed on correspondences between and about Du Bois, Sol Plaatje, and Charlotte Maxeke. I don't know, some ancestors looking out for me. Somebody's looking out for me, yeah.
So do you see a lot of parallels currently? I mean, you brought this up. Thank you so much for your presentation, by the way. It was really beautiful. And I feel like I want to just do more research and hang out with you and find out so much more information. It's really cool. But when you were talking about smuts,
yeah.
Do you see a parallel between where Du Bois was railing against that particular human.
Yeah.
With where we are 80 years later, and is the answer to folks like Smuts and those folks now rising up in similar sonic ways. I mean, I just can't help but sit here and think we've known about people like Smuts for this many years, and we're still struggling against them on a daily basis.
Yeah. Say again? Bad Bunny is a great example. Yeah. I think there are. First of all, I think there are consistencies between that Smuts moment and where we are now. And Du Bois's wording in the text, which was a speech that we read yesterday in the reading group, that Du Bois gave in 1950. So it would have been 2 years after the formalization of apartheid in South Africa. It would have been 2 years after the announcement of Israel as a state, and it would have been 3 years after the British partition of Pakistan and India. So all of these massive things were happening in that moment. And so in 1950, Du Bois gave the speech, and if you even in the opening kind of preambles that he goes through, you could transpose those words to this moment and it would land 100%. So thanks, Adam, and thank you. But in terms of the kind of emergence of the work of sound, again, I think South Africa is a place where you could find a ton of examples. I'm thinking about bands like Kujenga, The Brother Moves On, Muhammad Dawji Trio. Actually, I'll just make I'm in the habit of making playlists. When I was working at Stepek, I made a Stepek playlist, and it was just like, so I'll figure something out and send it around to the library group, and we can disperse it. There we go. There we go. Yeah. We're gonna make it the Boys Center South Africa playlist, and we're gonna spread it around. So that and you know, Bad Bunny is a good example, I think, as well. But outside of the commercial sphere, this kind of what you see here is still going on as well. And so there's the commercial recorded element, the formalized kind of, okay, we're gonna lay this down on a track and we're gonna go and perform it at shows. That exists, but this is also ongoing in a place like South Africa. Desiree taught me a lot about Trinidad. I'm thinking about examples of kind of collective drumming and the calling of ancestor through voice and vocalization, collective singing and song making, and thinking about also the kind of long tradition of song making at Carnival for in Trinidad. And I mention that because there's a consistent hearkening towards notions of spirit that aren't only ethereal and metaphysical, but are also concrete things that exist within the relation between each other, which is something that I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to show that there is we are related to one another, whether we want to be or not. And notions of spirit that only abstract spirit and time and I think we need to do more to grab a hold of those notions a bit more, and I think song is one of the ways. And again, just to answer your actual question, yes, I think it's still going on, and I would like to go and find more examples for you. So when I make that playlist, I'll swing it around.
Mine aligns, but you can.
You see?
Go first.
Yeah. So this isn't quite a question. It's just more of an observation. What you're saying right now kind of reminds me of realizing the collective consciousness that's actually taking place and how that's actually shifting. And once we're more in tune with what's happening within our collective consciousness, we can actually move forward to have productive conversations and to actually resist against the things that are happening in front of us that are actually breaking us down as a society, because at the end of the day, we're all connected to each other, regardless if we want to accept it or not,
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you. And just another side note, Yusi is an incredible musician and an artist in their own right. So if you want to go talk to interesting people, there's another one. Yeah. Do you want to, I know it's related, but if you want to go, or if there's anybody else, I don't know where we are time-wise. We still have 10 minutes, so.
My question was actually, so aside from your dissertation, or in addition to your dissertation, where would we go to learn more information about this? Or as, in addition to, perhaps a playlist, how can we find more and explore this idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, honestly, firstly, I would say go to the Du Bois Center website and the Center for Humanities Research, UWC website. Both of those places are constantly updating. Okay, this is the reading list that we're doing. These are the events coming up. And if you follow that thread, you will have a long ass bibliography by the end of the semester. So I would say that would be a solid starting point. If you want to be actively involved in the community, I cannot recommend the Du Bois reading group on a Monday morning enough. There are two superstars sitting right in front here. Yeah, who are there.
Just email me if you want to sign up.
Yeah. Please, I can't recommend it enough. Whether this is your field of study or not, you're gonna learn a lot from experience, from people's personal experience, but also from the text. And if there's a book that I could recommend as a jumping off point, I would recommend two, just because they think of and with sound, would be Souls of Black Folk by Du Bois, and then I Write What I Like by Steve Biko, which is less obvious, I think, for a lot of people, but there's some solid calls to think about spirit and song and in protest and all of those things.
I'm really interested in you're talking about what is and isn't struggle song, and you make a distinction here. You talked also about individualism and about sort of music for maybe more of a community or collective purpose versus to be recorded and then received. And I'm thinking about, like I'm a musician, so this very much resonates with me, right? This idea of using music as a tool for exploring yourself and also opening up other channels with other people. But I always was troubled by when I would tell someone I was a musician, they would tell me, "Oh wow, that's magical. That's something I could never be," right? And this is all just sort of like pretext for you to maybe riff and share your thoughts about the place of music in American culture today, and the passive versus active relationship that we have with music, and whether that maybe is, I feel that could be a barrier to utilizing song in the way that you've shared, for example, with songs.
Yeah, I also just to say I like your use of riffing there. I like the music reference. I don't know. I think that is a difficult thing that we're gonna have to contend with if we are going to move towards to what I dream of and hope for in the world, but also in terms of sound making and music making and sonic utterance and all of these things that I'm trying to come to define. One of the things I would say is there are long traditions of sonic work, in the States. So I'm just thinking before the practices of enslavement at the beginning of the colonial expansion. Some of the colonial writings talk about, they were standing around beating drums and making chants and all of these things, talking about the native indigenous people of this land. And I wonder if when we're talking about decolonization, when we talk about abolishing these structures of colonial violence and state violence, if we can also kind of harken back to the already existing sonic traditions in a place like this. I think that would be one way to nudge people. But then also, I think if we are serious about the work of anti-capitalism, we are also going to be serious about the work of deconstructing what I consider to be the violent and hegemonic capitalism of an industry like the music industry in the USA. So the hegemony of the USA determines what the rest of the world can say and can listen to and can listen like and can experience music within. And so if we are going to do anti-capitalist work, it is going to mean that we are going to have to reconsider how we engage with the work of publishing sonic utterance as well. How we're going to think of publishing music and so on, and how that's going to relate. So it's going to be difficult work. But I'm also with you in the sense of we need to get past making music as if it's, and art in general, as if it's this mystical practice that's far away from everybody. Just try a thing. You don't have to sell it for $100,000 in the fucking Louvre or some shit. Just make a thing. Make a noise, paint a thing,
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I completely agree with you. And I'm brought to mind the whole Live Nation Ticketmaster thing that happened yesterday, right? And that's the first thing that you need to break down. But I think about how you were talking about colonialism and the capitalism. We went too far in compartmentalizing where art should be.
Yeah.
And now we're so far into that where things should be in their proper place that we can't get out of the boundaries that we created, we being America over decades, centuries. And it's not just breaking down the music industry, it's breaking down those barriers where we don't allow people to, sing except in church, in a building, at a certain time every week.
Yeah.
Right? If you're singing, walking down the street, you're seen as having a mental health problem, or why are they out of place, right? And it's not just capitalism; it's propriety that we need to break down.
Yeah.
And make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And we are at 1:00, so I'm gonna wrap up by saying, piggybacking off that and saying again, my deep bias towards sound. Sound is a bleeding medium. It doesn't respect boundaries and borders. It unfolds, it flattens out over time and space, of course. But if we keep nudging for a pulse, if we keep making a pulse, if we keep triggering a beat or whatever the case may be, it's a bleeding medium. It doesn't respect those boundaries. It does not. Play your song and irritate your neighbor and then go break bread with them and say sorry, but okay, I'll put your songs on the playlist next Saturday morning when I'm cleaning, instead of then you don't have to listen to my punk or whatever I'm listening to at the time. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Sound is a bleeding medium, and sound is a medium that exists beyond just the ear, and it can exist and be experienced through our bodies as a visual thing, So yeah, I just want to end with that and say thank you all again so much. I really, really appreciate this a hell of a lot.